do this. Okay. Hey, UVic. My name's Emily. I'm your UVSS Director of Campaigns and Community Relations. Today, we're going to be doing a feature series of the MLA candidates running in Victoria Beacon Hill. I'm joined by Jenn Neilson today. Would you like to just introduce yourself, Jenn?
Sure. Hi, I'm Jenn Neilson, and I am running to be your MLA for Victoria Beacon Hill.
Amazing. And just another reminder, you can still request your mail-in ballot, and general voting day is on October 24th. Advanced voting is October 15th to 21st. We're going to start with some rapid fire questions. Jenn, what's your favorite brunch place in Victoria?
Oh, Northern Quarter, no question.
Amazing. Netflix or Disney Plus?
Oh, Netflix, except for Hamilton.
Nice. Okay. What's your favorite coffee shop in Victoria?
Cafe Fantastico.
Solid. So into the real stuff. UVic students have expressed a strong desire to create a more socially just province. Current measures by municipalities to reduce systemic racism in police forces have simply not solved the problem, and economic inequities in marginalized groups continue to create generational challenges for children, families, and communities. I'm wondering what specific changes you think should be made to the Police Act to address systemic racism in policing.
Yeah, let me first say that I think the most important thing is we need to stop sending the police when there's nothing they can do to help. So I had a situation recently where someone called the police because my toddler was having a tantrum on the front porch, even though he was accompanied by an adult. So about half an hour after the tantrum was over, we had a knock at the door, and the police were lovely. They were super, super helpful and understanding. And one of the officers said, "Well, is there anything I can do to help?" And I said, "Well, there's things people could do to help. Maybe you need more babysitting or, that sort of thing, but not anything that the police could do to help." So I think, we need to start doing what's been done in some other jurisdictions and send like paramedics and a mental health expert, or we need to start sending social workers, or we need to start sending, other people who are actually in a position to help, as opposed to sending the police and saddling the police with all of this work that they're not really in a position to address, for challenges they're not really in a position to address. But in terms of the Police Act in particular, we really need to review the current restrictions on police liability, and we need to make sure the police are held accountable for racism when it does happen, because it happens to the best of us, and we have to take responsibility for that and try to make it right, and for any abuses of power that do happen. So that would mean, for one thing, strengthening the complaint mechanisms within the Police Act, but really the primary focus needs to be on prevention rather than redress, because it's just not good enough to let these things happen and then give people a way to complain. Really, we need to stop them from happening in the first place, which means the police need to focus on policing and crime actions, and we need to increase the number and types of situations that healthcare workers and social workers deal with, right? Healthcare workers are extremely well trained in dealing with people in very difficult situations, and we just don't hear stories of people being injured when they are having a mental health crisis or an addictions crisis and show up in the ER and are having some difficult to deal with behaviors, because mental health workers are properly trained and have the support hospital workers are properly trained and have the support they need to deal with those situations and to de-escalate them. So we need to be transferring more of those responses over to people who are able to de-escalate the situation.
Thank you for that. So students overwhelmingly believe that the climate emergency requires an immediate and an effective response from all levels of government. I'm wondering, if elected, are you committed to eliminating all oil and gas subsidies in BC?
I absolutely am. I would make climate action an immediate priority. There's no time to waste. 2030 isn't even soon enough. And one of the top things that I really think we need to do immediately is we need to preserve old growth forests and other non-renewable resources. So sometimes people make the mistake of thinking that all forests are renewable. Many forests are renewable, but old growth isn't one of them. So old growth forests should be categorized along with oil and gas as things that should stay where they are, in the case of oil and gas in the ground, or in the case of oil and gas in the ground, and in the case of old growth forests, where they are standing as forests, rather than being used as ways to generate energy. So yes, I am appalled that the NDP has been supporting fracking subsidies and oil and gas subsidies with a climate crisis looming. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah, thanks again. So 4 years after Bill 23, which is the Sexual Violence and Misconduct Policy Act, we continue to hear from students that many post-secondary institutions simply haven't implemented effective sexual violence and misconduct policies. I'm wondering how you'll create and regulate minimum standards for this type of policy for our post-secondary institutions.
Absolutely, that's really important. I mean, it's really important in order to create a society where equity is a real value, and where everyone feels safe. It's really important to implement these sorts of policies. And as particularly publicly funded post-secondary institutions are regulated by government, and government does have a role in making sure that students there feel safe. So I think that what we need to do is to make funding for post-secondary institutions contingent on having a proper policy in place to deal with sexual violence and misconduct, not only on the part of students, on the part of faculty, on the part of any other staff member at that institution, board members, and so on and so forth. I think, unfortunately, professors are often in a position of a great deal of privilege, where they are able to use their authority and to take advantage of students and not face any repercussions for that. And that is absolutely unacceptable. And if the universities and other post-secondary institutions are not willing to do something about that, then perhaps the province needs to step in and force them to have some real policies in place in order to get their funding.
Yeah, thank you. Next up, costs like tuition and housing continue to rise while students' incomes have dropped significantly during the COVID-19 crisis. How will you economically support students, given that many have lost their sources of income while costs of education and housing still increase?
Yeah, so I think we need a multi-part solution to this problem. We definitely need to have a tuition freeze as a short-term measure. We need to have a rent freeze. We need to have an ICBC rate freeze. And we need to invest in transit. We need to have fare-free transit available, not just for post-secondary students. We need that to be available to everyone. And we need to have better intercity transportation options as well, so that people can travel to and from their home communities when they're living away to go to school. The reason I say that a tuition freeze for post-secondary education should be a temporary measure is because ultimately post-secondary education should be free. And available to anyone who would like to pursue post-secondary education. And of course, the question that always follows that is, but how do we pay for it, right? We pay for it with a wealth tax. We pay for it by taxing the people who have a comfortable way of life, but the people who have way more money than they could ever spend in their lifetimes, the super rich. That's how we do it.
Thanks, Jen. And I'm also wondering, how will you address the housing shortage, particularly our acute housing crisis in Victoria that disproportionately impacts our students?
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard some talk recently of potentially opening up some more dormitories at UVic, and I think that's a great place to start, but it's not going to do nearly enough. I think ultimately what we need to do is we need to start decommodifying housing. I know that's a bit of a tall order, but we've seen some really great success stories from Germany in particular, and Austria, where they have started to turn housing to stop housing from being a real estate investment and keep it for homes for people. So there was a lovely move by Saanich City Council just recently where they're allowing more garden suites. So that's a great thing to do. We need to increase density of housing all across the region. At the moment in the city of Victoria, it's not possible to have both a suite in your home and a garden suite. Well, why not? If your lot's big enough, why couldn't you have a suite and a garden suite? So we need to really be thinking creatively and opening up more options for people who do wish to use the space that they have to house more folks.
Yeah, thank you again. And Jenn, just thank you for taking the time for all these thoughtful answers. Is there anything else you'd like to add? We just have a 10 seconds left or so in this interview.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I would really like to encourage students to vote early, get out to the polls, request your mail-in ballot, make sure it's received by October 24th. Your voices matter. This is going to be a really tight race, and we have a chance to win this riding. This isn't a throwaway vote for the Greens this time, which is what we've always been hoping for, right? That it wouldn't be a throwaway. So really encourage you, if you'd like to get involved with the campaign, please go find my campaign page, drop us a line. We'd love to have you and get you some experience doing stuff that will serve you well for a long time. And I would just like to point out that my two priorities in this campaign are social justice and the environment. So I know people are looking for real, concrete progress on social justice, and that is absolutely a top priority for me.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you again, Jenn.
Thank you so much.